back to the Jayda InStitches show. We are eagerly awaiting fall around here, and today's project is the perfect representation of that. We are going to make this adorable little decorative pumpkin using the oh so appropriate falling leaves stitch. Now, we've used the falling leaves stitch on this channel to make several projects in the past because it's a simple little pattern and it's really pretty, and we'll link all those projects down below in the description box if you want to check them out. But today we're going to use it to make this sweet little pumpkin. Now, there's a couple differences between these pumpkins, so before I turn you loose on the tutorial, I'm going to walk you through them. One, this beautiful little thing was made using some self-striping yarn I had left over from projects from, gosh, last year or the year before, I'm not sure now. And I've understuffed it so that it's a little more squishy so that I can kind of squish it into a squat little shape. And for those of you who know what back loops only means, I use the back loops only as I did every row of the falling leaf stitch for this pattern. And that helped really accentuate the pretty little ridges on that pumpkin. So that's the little trick to this one. Exact same pattern. I used all orange for this one. I overstuffed it slightly so that it's a little more round and chubby when it sits on the shelf. And I did not use back loops only. I just crocheted every row regularly, like I'll show you in the tutorial, because this is the one we're demonstrating today. So you can try the exact same pattern with slight little variations to get very different looking pretty little pumpkins. So let's grab our hooks, we'll grab our yarn, we'll head on over to the craft table, and we will stitch up a falling leaves pumpkin together. In order to make our falling leaves pumpkin, I'm using a size 4 medium weight acrylic yarn. You want around 84 yards of your pumpkin color and about 3 or 4 yards of the stem color. I used a really pretty self-striping yarn for this pumpkin, which I think just looks absolutely gorgeous. And today I'm going to be demonstrating using a mostly orange color. You want a pair of scissors, a yarn needle, some stuffing for your pumpkin, and the hook we're using is a 5.5 millimeter, also known as an I or a 9 in the US. 5 if you have old hooks from the UK. And once you've got all that together, we can get started.
Visit our shop and purchase a pattern. You'll help support our show. And we'll put a link to our shop in the description box down below.
We are using the falling leaves stitch for the base of our pumpkin. We're going to start with a slip knot on our hook. And we're going to chain 23 to begin. So the falling leaves stitch is based off a multiple of 3 chains plus 2 for turning. So if you wanted to make this a taller pumpkin, you could use a foundation chain that was any multiple of 3 plus an extra 2 chains on the end for turning. But for us, today we're going to chain 23 to begin. Once we have 23 chains all across our foundation chain row, we're going to skip the first chain from the hook, find the second one, and single crochet into it. And here goes the falling leaves stitch. You're going to skip the next 2 chains, 1, 2, find the third, and work a little leaf into it. Single crochet and 2 double crochet, all into the same chain. So single crochet, 2 double crochet, all worked into the same chain, and that creates a little leaf. Skip 2 chains, find the third, and repeat. Single crochet and 2 double crochet. Now you can use just the top loop of your chains as you work across, or you can use the top 2 loops of your chains. Doesn't matter, just keep it consistent. And there's leaf number 2. Skip 2 chains, find the third, and single crochet and 2 double crochet, all worked into the same chain. You're just going to repeat that little pattern all the way across. So skip 2 chains, single crochet, 2 double crochet into the next chain, and I'll hook up with you at the end. At the end of the row, you'll have 6 little leaves. So there's a little single crochet there to start. 6 leaves, and then to finish the row we're going to skip the last 2 chains, and into the very final chain we're going to just single crochet. So the row begins with a single crochet and it ends with a single crochet too. And that's what row 1 looks like. Every row of this pattern is the same. So at the end of every row, we're going to chain 1 and turn. Into the very first stitch, which will be the single crochet from the previous row, you're just going to single crochet. And then you're going to skip 2 stitches, which are the 2 double crochets from the leaf of the previous row. Find the 3rd stitch, which will always be a single crochet, and then you work a little leaf into it. Single crochet, 2 double crochet. Skip 2 stitches, those will be the double crochets. Find the 3rd, that'll be the single crochet, and work a little leaf. Single crochet, 2 double crochet, all worked into the same stitch. And that's the same thing all the way across. You'll have the same number of leaves when you get to the end. Skip, skip, single crochet, 2 double crochet, and I'll hook up with you when we get there. At the end of the row, you'll have 6 little leaves. So there's the single crochet that started, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You'll always have 6 leaves in each row. And we finish by single crocheting into the little single crochet that's at the end of that row. That's what began row 1. So every row begins and ends with a single crochet, and you'll have 6 little leaves in between. That is the only pattern you have to have in your head for the next 26 rows. So we're going to have 28 rows of this little falling leaf pattern all together. Every row ends with a chain 1, turn, single crochet immediately into that single crochet that you just finished the previous row with. Skip the next 2 double crochet, find the next single crochet, and single crochet, 2 double crochet into that stitch. So you're always sort of hopping over the fat part of the leaf from the row before. Bunk, bunk, and you're creating your new little leaf in the little single crochet or the bottom of the leaf from the row previous. And you're going to get pretty quick at this. You can start to sort of eyeball where your little dips are, the little single crochets, because the row will dip down a little bit. And of course, using this pattern is going to create a really nice bubbly textured effect for the skin of our pumpkin. All right, I'm going to let you go. I'll see you at the end of row 28. That is 28 rows of the falling leaf stitch, and you'll notice that the top and the bottom are a little bit pinched, and the middle wants to poof out a little bit, and that's because we finish and start each end of the pattern with a single crochet, and that just kind of pinches the top and bottom, which is why this pattern really lends itself to being turned into a pumpkin. And look at that beautiful textured patterning that we get. That is really going to make a nifty looking pumpkin. All right, so what's next? Well, to count your rows, it's very easy. You want to count, remember we've built it this way, and every bump that you can see the bumps there, is equals 2 rows basically, because there's a bump up and a bump down. The other way you can do it is to just pull them apart. So here's a leaf, and then on the diagonal there's one, and there's one, and there's one, up, down, and you just sort of count 1, 2, 3, 4, like in a little tiny zigzag all the way across, and that's how you can count your rows. Now if you've got 1 too many, or 1 too few, or 2 too many, etc., doesn't matter. If you have more rows, it'll make a chubbier pumpkin. If you have fewer rows, it'll make a skinnier pumpkin. So obviously you want to err on the side of more rows, but 28 is what we're going for. The next thing we're going to do is seam up the edge and cinch up the bottom. So we're going to cut a long tail on our yarn. I'm going to make it at least twice, maybe even 3 times the length of the width, or I should say the length of the pattern. That makes sure that I have enough yarn for sewing and for cinching afterwards. We're going to fasten off, and we're going to take our yarn needle and thread up that tail, and all we're going to do is bring both edges together, and you're going to sew. And this does not have to be pretty. You want to keep your stitches fairly close together. You want to try and grab sort of where you can grab 2 loops over your hook on both sides, you want to do that. But this doesn't have to be super neat and tidy. You just kind of want to keep the edges even. So I'm grabbing what's the whole stitch and what's 2 loops on the foundation stitch row. And I'm going to just try and do that all the way down. You don't want to keep your stitches too tight, but you don't want them to be too loose either. And the nice thing about this kind of a pattern is that any sewing, good or bad, doesn't really show. So just go ahead and sew up that seam, and I'll hook up with you at the bottom. Alright, I've sewn all the way along the edge here using the whip stitch, which is when your yarn just keeps going in the same direction and you go over top of your seam. And now we're going to cinch up the bottom. So that's my little tail that I started with. I'm just going to ignore that. All of this is going to end up being the inside of the pumpkin because we're going to turn it right sides out in a minute. Here is the fun part about cinching up the bottom. So you've still got your yarn needle hooked up to your yarn. We don't have to tie a knot or anything at the bottom of our seam. If you've got your little starting tail there, which you should, you can just quickly tie a knot if you want to, and that'll make sure that your seam doesn't want to come undone. And you don't have to weave in that short tail because it's going to end up on the inside of the pumpkin anyway. And that also tells you where you started. And you're going to look for all the little spaces, sort of every other little leaf. And you're going to weave your needle in and out through those spaces. So they're pretty far apart. They're about the width of one leaf. I'll get my little tail out of the way there. In and out. In and out. And in and out. And in and out. There we go. And that should bring you all the way back round to where your little tail is. And you're going to just gently cinch it tightly shut. So try not to pull too hard on your yarn. Anytime we stress out our yarn, we kind of weaken the fibers, and we don't want to do that. So just gently cinch it tightly shut. And then I like to hold it right at the cinch point, just so it doesn't want to undo on me. And then I just grab a few loops. Just anything around where that little hole would be. Run my needle underneath it. There we go. And then cinch it a little tighter. Come here, you. Hold it again. And then I'm going to run my needle across the bottom. This does not need to be pretty or perfect. You just want to stop your yarn from wanting to undo. So these are what I would call stay stitches. You literally want your stitches to stay. There you go. And once you've done that a couple times, you can use that little short tail again to knot off your yarn. And you don't have to weave anything in. You don't have to trim anything. This is all going to wind up in the middle. So once you're done, you're going to turn it right side out. Cute as a button. And now we're going to grab our stem color. You've got green, brown, whatever color you want to do your stem with. And we're going to add our stem right onto the top of our little pumpkin. We're going to take our stem color. I'm using this pretty little green. And we're going to focus on the same spaces around the top that we did along the bottom when we were sort of weaving our tail in and out. So I'm going to find my seam. And I'm going to grab the space right next to the seam. Again, this doesn't have to be pretty or perfect because this is an organic shape. So technically the wonkier it looks, the better. I'm going to just slip stitch to join my yarn in that space. I'm going to chain one and single crochet in the same place. So just to get us started. Then I'm going to try and keep my stitches relatively tight. I'm going to hop across until I see that next space. And I'm basically skipping over 2 rows. And I'm going to place my hook in that little space and single crochet. I have 28 rows all the way around, so I'm going to end up with around 14 single crochets because I'm looking for that little hole that happens kind of in the divots between where you see those little bumps. There's a little hole that's just created by the edge, sort of just how that pattern comes together. And if I keep my single crochets nice and tight, then it's going to cinch together the top of my pumpkin as I go. So I'm going to hop over that nice big bump, find the next space, and single crochet to it. So however many rows you did, and like I say, I recommend an even number of rows. I just find it works out nicely with this pattern. You'll have approximately half that in single crochets around the top of your pumpkin when you're done that little row. And I might pull my little fluff in there, but that's how we start. All right, we're going to get halfway around and we're going to pull up on our loop here, pause, and we're going to grab our stuffing and we're going to stuff the inside of our pumpkin. So when you're stuffing, you want to just take little tiny bits of stuffing at a time, and you can use pillow stuffing, you can use leftover yarn, chopped up t-shirts, socks, whatever you've got lying around. The heavier your stuffing, the more potty and heavy your pumpkin will be. The lighter your stuffing, the more lightweight your pumpkin will be. So if this is more of a toy, then I recommend pillow stuffing. And if it's more of a decoration, then you might want to put something heavier in it, like chopped up t-shirt. But just focus on getting all of the little bits to the bottom, evenly distributing the stuffing throughout, and then you want to stop when your stuffing gets up just about to the edge. Alright, I have evenly stuffed my pumpkin. There's still some space to put more in at the top, but that's fine. If you want it to be a little squishier, you don't want to overstuff your pumpkin, but we're going to finish this row off now, and then as it closes in at the top, you can add a little bit of extra stuffing just to firm up those last few places. So hook back in the loop, tighten things up, continue single crocheting into each of those little tiny sort of spaces that are created on either side of a couple of rows of your pumpkin top. So I had 28 rows. I'm going to have approximately 14 single crochet worked across the top, and that will sort of cinch things in a little bit. There's my last one. Now I'm not going to join my yarn with a single crochet. I'm actually going to just continue going in a spiral because pumpkins grow on a spiraling tendril. So we're going to mimic nature as much as we can here. And if you want, you can put in a little extra stuffing. I think I will. I'll just got a little bit of extra here. I'm just going to gently tuck in that top. There we go. Yes, very good. And of course, once you're done, you can sort of squish your pumpkin into shape. Now we're going to work a row of decreases. So without joining the row, we're just going to pick up that first single crochet that we made. Come here, you. Keeping tension on our yarn, and we're going to single crochet 2 stitches together all the way around. So if you had around 14 single crochet like me, then you'll have about 7 single crochet at the end of this row, but exact numbers don't matter. So if you've got an odd number, you'll just have 1 little extra single crochet left over. Who cares? This is this is a natural looking little shape. So the more uneven it is, the better. Once you've single crocheted 2 stitches together all the way around, you've really significantly closed in that hole now. Don't worry, we're not going to get any smaller. All you want to do is single crochet now in each stitch all the way around for maybe 5 or 6 rows. Again, this will depend on how tall you want your stem to look. So you're just single crocheting in each of those stitches all the way around. It's a little tight, some of that work, but basically what you want to do is create a stem that sits up. Now you can have it short, you can have it tall, however many rows you want. I think I've got about 6 rows here. That's what I'm going to do with this one. So just single crochet in every stitch around, no joining of rows, until it's about as tall as you want. Again, stitch counts, who cares? I've got about 5 rows, maybe even 4. Again, doesn't really matter. That's about as tall as I want my little stem to be. Now we're not going to stuff it, and once you get to a height of stem that you like, you're just going to pause right where you are, squish the top of your stem together, and then single crochet through both sides at the same time. So you're basically just picking up a stitch that's on either side of that little pinched top. Again, if it doesn't work out perfectly, it does not matter, because this is supposed to look kind of organic, a little crooked and cranky, if you will. Then, once you're finished and it's completely stitched along the top, just slip stitch into the same place as your last single crochet to kind of join it. That's just going to make it kind of give it a nice little edge. And now we're going to do some finishing touches. So cut yourself a nice length of yarn, 18 inches, maybe 45 centimeters, somewhere around there. Fasten off, grab your yarn needle, and if you've got any little spaces that opened up, so let's say you've got some gaps that you don't like, you can just take your yarn, stick your needle all the way down through the inside of your stem, pop it out somewhere at the bottom, now, if you want to pull on your yarn a little bit and have your stem kind of crunch down, you can do that. That kind of makes it look a little more, a little more pumpkin-y, you know, just that little bit of a twist. So you can pull a little tightly, and then you just want to weave your yarn needle in through some of the stitches around the base of your stem. I should probably give myself a little extra space here. There we go. I'm probably going to go all the way around, just working my needle through the stitches, whatever stitches I like, and I'm going to just tighten it up as I go. And that is going to close in any of those little spaces that I think I don't like, or I'm concerned maybe of my stuffing coming out, especially if you use little bits of yarn. I used a little bit of some yarn scraps in the middle of this just to poof it out a little bit. It's a great use of leftover yarn. That way you don't actually have to throw out anything, no matter how small the little bit of yarn is. I like to save them in a jar like this. And then once the jar fills up, I usually use it as stuffing for a little project, like this little guy. All right, I think that looks pretty good. I'll just weave this back through the last couple. Double back on a couple of stitches. There we go. And I'm going to pull the whole thing down into the inside. I'm just going to bring my needle out. This is a fun little trick. Bring my needle out through the side somewhere just to kind of make that thing disappear. And then I'm going to stick my needle in a little bit away, find the yarn and just wiggle my needle back and forth. Sometimes it helps to go at a different angle. There we go. I'll just wiggle my needle back and forth until that little string disappears. The other thing you can do is just weave it, grab it at the end of your yarn again, thread it up with your needle, and just kind of keep pulling it in like this. I'll show you. You can weave it, go back in through the same place that you brought it out, because you don't want to create a stitch on the outside of your pumpkin, and then just very carefully bring it out another thing. Don't pull too tightly, and then just keep doing that until you've woven in the majority of your tail. You can also trim your tail if you feel it's too long. The only thing that's left to do now is to squish and pinch your little pumpkin into any kind of shape you want. You can sort of pull up on that cute little stem we made, make it kind of sit to the side, maybe flatten it, twist a little bit, however you want your pumpkin to look. And of course, because we used that pretty little falling leaf stitch, we've got this lovely bumpy texture running all the way around the edge of our pumpkin.
And there you go, a pretty little pumpkin to add to your decor or to start decorating for the fall. It's coming soon. I know it is, because the leaves are even starting to turn in a few places around here. Ooh, time for a drive. Anyway, we hope you enjoyed this project today along with us, and we will see you soon here on the Jayda InStitches show. Until then, stay safe, stay crafty, and have an awesome week. Bye everyone!
Hi everybody, Mr. InStitches here. Thank you for watching today. Here are some of our other videos you might be interested in. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe.